Welcome back everyone to another episode of Firearms in 5, a series where I appease the almighty algorithm. Today we'll be discussing the largely forgotten M15 rifle. The rifle that became the M15 was born from one of the many problems encountered in the decade-long lightweight rifle program. Now, I've already covered this fairly extensively in the first part of my M14 series, so for our purposes today, our story begins in 1953. Following the tests that killed the highly favoured T-47 and elevated the neglected T-44, the rifle that eventually became the M14, it had become more than apparent that accurate, full-auto fire on a lightweight 30 caliber rifle was completely hopeless. However, automatic fire capability was a must for the new rifle program, so the American military's focus shifted from a singular, all-in-one rifle instead to a single platform that could be adapted to different roles. As it relates to what became the M15, they began a rapid investment in heavy-barreled models of the rifles they were testing, rifles that would be much better suited to automatic fire and could more completely replace the venerable M1918 BAR. The T-44, now the favoured American contender, would receive its heavy-barreled model in the form of the T-44E1 in July 1953. Featuring a new heavier barrel, a bipod, a hinged butt plate, and a rate of fire reducer. Interestingly, this reducer was another part lifted from John Garand's wartime T-20E2, though slightly altered by the man himself to fit the T-44E1. Tested extensively over the next year, the haphazard T-44E1 was far from a finished product. The stock was uncomfortable, the bipod caused accuracy problems, and heat mirage messed with the sighting, among other issues. Worse still, both the T-44 and T-44E1 were still being built on rechambered T-20E2 receivers from 1945, causing frequent and severe malfunctions. Thankfully though, someone came up with the brilliant idea of building a dedicated receiver for the new rifles, and in June 1954, such a receiver was produced by Dave Mathewson, with some help from a now retired John Garand. The rifles that were built upon them were the T-44E4 and the heavy-barreled T-44E5. The new heavy-barreled model featured a new flash hider along with a heavier handguard and stock, all of which made the rifle much more apt to sustained fire. What happened to the T-44E2 and E3, I hear you frantically typing in the comments? Well, they're not terribly important. They were just experiments with different gas systems for the T-44 that never really went anywhere significant. Nonetheless, from late 1953 onwards, the improved T-44s managed to turn their fortunes around, making a massive comeback against the Belgian FNFAL during testing, particularly in reliability. Physically and politically advantageous, both the T-44E4 and its heavy-barreled brother were adopted in 1957 as the M14 and M15 respectively. The twin rifles had clawed their way into service after an exhausting 12-year program. But even so, their fight for survival was far from over. For one, the M15 was already on shaky ground, with the 1957 adoption of the M60 GPMG, a weapon much more capable of fully supplanting the BAR. Still though, the newly adopted rifles were put through another lengthy testing and evaluation program to iron out any remaining flaws, and when all was said and done, the M15 seemed like it was there to stay. It performed satisfactorily in sustained fire, and its commonalities with the M14 would make production of the two quite simple. However, the Marines soon came along to snatch the M15's successes away. In 1958, the Marines tested the new rifles, and came up with a brilliant idea of their own. Why go through the trouble of using all these different modifications on the M15 when we can just slap a bipod on the M14, vent the handguard a little better, and have it do the same stuff? So they put their theory to the test, and when they tested this M14 equipped with a bipod and ventilated fiberglass handguard against the M15, they were practically identical in performance. The M15, with all its heavier parts and accoutrements, just didn't offer a significant advantage. So confident were the Marines in this simple setup that they formally declared the M15 unnecessary, proclaiming that sustained fire capability hinged more on the ventilation of the handguard than the weight of the barrel. It was a big claim, and one that demanded further investigation. Springfield themselves chose to test their theory further in November 1958, and when the results came in, the Infantry Board concurred with the Marines. By July 1959, the US Continental Army Command formally recommended declaring the M15 obsolete, and on December 17th, the rifle was declared as such. Just over 2 years since the new rifle had been adopted, the M15 was already dead, and the rifle was buried without a single production weapon ever being produced. But the M15 wasn't completely useless. The trials of the rifle against the Marine-modified M14 resulted in the adoption of the slotted fiberglass handguard, an addition which prevented it from charring or even catching fire during sustained firing. And for a brief time, it was a feature of all M14s. Similarly, its hinged butt plate and M2 bipod would also live on, both fitted to specialized M14s for better control in automatic fire. The failures of the M15 also informed the development of the later M14A1, a more robust and refined squad automatic weapon that really deserves a video of its own. Killed off before it could even get started, the M15 is now little more than a historical footnote in the M14's story, but it still contributed some key improvements to the rifle program in its turbulent early years. Well, that's all I really have to say on the M15, so for now, thank you very much for watching. I'm happy you all have enjoyed this series so far, and I intend to keep going with it in between my bigger projects. As always, sources will be below, and I appreciate any likes or comments. Engagement on these videos really helps the channel grow. Thank you again, that's all from me for now, and I'll see you in the next one.